Oh, hello world. My name is Stephen Walker and welcome to A Walker in the Woods. These days it seems like there's more anger and less patience. There's a lot of angst out there, and many of us are seeking change. More fulfilling work, maybe, something more meaningful. But are you really ready for real change? A new challenge or maybe a new life? An opportunity that may turn your life around in a way that you couldn't imagine. I'd like to begin with a quote by Mark Twain, and this quote is about travel. He said that travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness, and many of our people need it sorely on these accounts. Broad, wholesome, charitable views of men and things cannot be acquired by vegetating in one little corner of the earth all one's lifetime. Travel is one way to spice up your life. It's a great way to get away from everything. Refresh your spirit, recharge your batteries, experience a new country maybe, or a new place in your country, new culture, new food, a chance to use all five senses: sound, sight, smell, taste, and touch. But for many, a trip is only a few days, maybe a week or two, and then you go home with a nice sunburn and your bank account is reduced, and then you go back to work, back to the grind. With the state of the economy these days, many of us can't even take off of work for a couple days to go take a trip, even in the same state or country. But what if I told you that you can get a free airplane ticket to a country and have a job waiting for you when you get there? Would you jump on it? If you have a university education and a desire to step out of your box, then this opportunity might be right for you. But let me be clear, this is no walk in the park. Like everything, it comes with positives and negatives. This is a dualistic world. We always think that the grass is greener on the other side of the fence, and it's not always true. But today I'm going to talk about how to find a job overseas, and I will talk about the requirements needed. I will talk about some pros and cons about life overseas. And I am living in South Korea. I have been here for over 20 years, and so I will talk a little bit more specifically about Korea, but also Japan and East Asia and even the Middle East. If you do decide to do this, then I will end this topic with the 5 stages of culture shock that you can expect to go through. And this is basically for people who haven't really traveled overseas before. Or living and traveling are very, very different. Traveling, you know that you're going home again. But when you live in a country for an extended period of time, then these 5 stages will definitely be part of your consciousness. But before I begin, I will tell you a little bit about myself. I was born in the United States and I graduated way back in 1994 from college with a journalism mass communications degree, bachelor's degree. And then after college, I went to work at a TV station in Wichita, Kansas. I worked there for 3 years, and I soon realized that no news is good news. So I quit that job and I became a volunteer for the Peace Corps. And I lived in a mud hut with no electricity, no running water in the Gambia, West Africa. I was a natural resource volunteer there. And I most definitely went through the 5 stages of culture shock while I was there. And I ended that experience about 6 months early. I decided to go home. And after I came home, I realized that I was not finished traveling overseas. I had what you call as itchy feet. So after one more year in Kansas, working at a different TV station, I found a job teaching English in East Asia. They paid for my airplane ticket over, actually a round trip ticket back then. And when I accepted the job, they asked me when I could come. And so in a month, within the month, I was on a plane and I was heading towards South Korea. And this was in January of 2000. And I worked in South Korea for 9 years. I worked at a hagwon, which is a private academy. And I worked there for 1 year and I hated it. It was teaching children. Basically, I started the day. It was around noon, I think, and I taught kindergarten students. And as the day progressed, I ended the day around, I think, 7. It might have been 8 p.m. And I was teaching middle school. So the as the day progressed, the ages got older, and it was kind of a sweatshop. And had I not met the people that I did meet, I would not have stayed there any longer than 1 year. It would have been a one and done. But in 2001, I interviewed at a university for a job and I was hired with only a bachelor's degree in journalism. I had no real teaching experience. I had no teaching credentials other than 1 year at a hagwon and a year and a half teaching art and some English at in Africa. But they hired me on, and I've been at the same university, believe it or not, for almost 25 years. Now, in 2009, I did take a sabbatical. I quit my job in South Korea and I got a job teaching English at a university in the Czech Republic. And I taught economics through English at a University Liberec, which is about an hour north of Prague. And it was a very, very good experience. The students were brilliant. However, economically speaking, the gig didn't pay. It didn't pay enough for me to stay in Czech Republic, so I basically made a U-turn and I came back to Korea, and I've been here ever since. And so I'm going to focus on how to get a job here in Korea or East Asia, even the Middle East. So how do you find one of these jobs? I will give you a website and I will share my screen and I'll take you through it. But here, this is, you just want to type in Dave's, you can type in actually eslcafe.com. It's commonly known, yes, I am human, commonly known as Dave's ESL Cafe. And so find a job, find a teacher. There's forums, resources, Dave's blog, and depending on the country, if you want a Korean, China, Japan, and basically you just scroll down and look for whatever city you're fond of. Here is the China job board. So a lot of job opportunities in China and also an international job board. Here's 147 jobs found: Saudi Arabia, Thailand, Vietnam, Mexico, Hong Kong. There's a lot of opportunity out there. To begin with, I'm going to review what a hagwon is. In Korea, it's called a hagwon, and it's basically a private academy, and they're everywhere. And they can be an English hagwon, math, science, art, music, different languages. Education is extremely important in South Korea. And after the students finish their normal education from 8 a.m. until 2 or 3 p.m., at a grade school or a high school, then the majority of students go to a hagwon, and they may go to one, two, three hagwons a day, depending on the financial capability of their parents. And so the students are basically studying from early morning until sometimes late at night. I still remember the middle school students that I taught at that hagwon way back in 2000. They always came in, eyes droopy, hunched over, slumped down. It was two young boys. And that was my first year of teaching, so I was kind of hyped and like, hey, I'm here to teach. I have to teach you. It's what I do. And they just had no energy. So I finally just started talking to them and I asked them about their life, and they told me, they're from sun up to sundown, they're studying and they basically hated life. And after I learned this, I kind of felt bad about pushing them. So we basically played games and just kind of talked and chilled out. But if you're not interested in teaching children, then there are adult hagwons where university students go, young professionals, even hagwons for, seniors. So, I mean, I've taught all ages while I've been here. And depending on where you live, up in Seoul, there's a lot more opportunity, but you can be placed throughout the whole country. And again, South Korea is about the same size as Indiana. It's not a large country, but there is a very large population still, but the population is declining. All right, so let's look at the requirements to teach English in Korea. Basically, they are number one, they're looking for native English speakers from 7 different countries. The top 7 countries are the United States, Canada, the UK. Now, again, the UK would be Northern Ireland, Ireland, England, Scotland, and Wales, Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa. As far as race is considered, to be honest, the majority of people from these countries are white. That being said, I've met people of all races, but the number one priority is if you are from one of these 7 countries. Number two, a bachelor's degree. It doesn't matter what you studied. I've met people from MIT. I've met microbiologists that have been teaching English over here. All different degrees. It's not a problem, but as long as you have a university degree, that is a priority. Number three, they will ask for your criminal record. So if your criminal record is clean, and I'm not sure how deep it goes, if you had maybe a DUI or something, and that might be a red flag actually. So they are looking for clean records, and rightfully so, because in the past there have been what we call economic refugees that have come here from different countries, and they're looking for a good time, and they get into trouble. And then when they get into trouble, they get on the news. And when they get on the news, then it becomes bad publicity for all foreigners. And number four is a clear speaking voice with a neutral accent. Now, again, people from South Africa, England, the British accent, the Australian accent, the New Zealand accent. I am from the Midwest. I may have a very neutral accent. And speaking slower than normal, I've kind of over 25 years, my intonation and speed of language has most definitely slowed down. And so when I go home, people are always asking, "Why are you speaking so slow?" Well, I'm from Kansas. But no, I guess it just kind of gets ingrained in your mind when you start talking to people. You never really know if they understand you or not. So basically, speaking clearly to be understood, that is the main priority of any language, is to be understood. And so if you don't have a clear intonation, if your accent is very harsh, then you may want to work on that before you have your interview. So what are the benefits of working at a hagwon. There will be severance pay after a contract completion. So basically, a contract is 1 year, and then you get 1 month severance pay. Most hagwons will give you a rent-free housing or housing allowance. So key money, it says 5 million won, and I'll put the American US dollar equivalent on screen. But key money is basically what you pay. If you want to rent an apartment, you have to put money down. So 5 million won down before you pay a monthly rent. And so this hagwon will pay 600,000 won a month plus 5 million key money. But when I first came to Korea, I had a roommate. And so they already had an apartment ready for me to move into. And I had a roommate, also another teacher from America. So I was young-ish. I think I was 28 when I first came to Korea. Another benefit is paid annual leave from a hagwon. That's 12 days. And that's not a lot. That's basically a lot of Korean holidays. And Korea does have a lot of holidays. Now, one-way flight reimbursement, that's basically flying you to Korea, but not back. Now, when I first started, they gave me a round-trip ticket. And salary is between 2.4 and 2.8 million a month. And so that's about 1,700 to 2,000 US dollar. And that's not a lot of money. However, that being said, depending on how frugal you are and if how young you are, now, if you have a family and you want to come and try and do this, then, I've known a number of families, young couples that have come here and had children in Korea, and both of them worked at the hagwon or at a university, and they were able to save a good amount of money. Now, another thing, there are a lot of hagwons that do not have good management. And I've heard a lot of horror stories. And actually, there's a nickname for it, and it's called hagwon hell. And also a midnight runner. So sometimes people come over here, they realize that their hagwon owner is a bit nefarious. He or she doesn't have your best interest and wants to basically work you into the ground. And so a number of people, they come and they are not happy with the situation, and they will do a midnight runner. They'll basically book a ticket, get on an airplane, last plane of the night, and split. If you're youngish, and you like children, then a hagwon is a good possibility, at least a foot in the door. And then once you're here, then you can start networking and meeting people and looking for other opportunity. And that's how I kind of got started. I started networking. I met a lot of people. I would go out to bars and meet other foreign teachers. And there was one guy from Ireland who I worked with at the hagwon, and he got a job. I was there for about 6 months, and he got a job at a university about an hour south of Seoul. And I kept in contact with him. And then as my contract at the hagwon was winding down, he contacted me and said, "Hey, there's a job down here. Come down and interview." So I did, and I got the job. And I only had at the time a bachelor's degree in journalism, mass communications. And after I got a job there, then I decided to take this teacher-in thing a bit more seriously, and I got my master's degree in TESOL. And TESOL is basically teaching English to students of other languages. I got it. It was a field-based program through Azusa Pacific University. There's a lot of different field-based master's degrees online that you can research. I got mine through Azusa Pacific, basically a university outside of LA in California. Basically, I had to go to Azusa, California, for 2 weeks at a time for 3 summers. And then we met in Chiang Mai, Thailand for 2 winters. So it was basically 2 weeks in LA in the summer, and then the winter time, it was 2 weeks in Chiang Mai, and then LA, Chiang Mai, and then we ended in LA. So it was about a 2.5 year program. And so I got my master's degree. It didn't really do much for my salary at the university. However, it did give me, a bit more merit. And salary at a university these days, the average is about, I guess, 36 million won. That's with housing. They give you a stipend for housing. But again, 36 million won. I'm not getting rich. But again, depending on how frugal you live, you can save money. Next is probably the largest perk, and that is your schedule. At a university, you can expect to work 4 days a week. And so basically, you have a 1 day research day. So in my university now, it's a Friday, so I work Monday through Thursday. And I believe I have actually, the hours range anywhere contractually. 14 hours a week is the contract. However, I do work more than that most semesters, and basically that's overtime. Now, again, as a teacher, you take your work home with you. You work on tests, you create your own tests, and you have the homework depending on the classes. I teach in the English department, and so I teach writing classes, creative presentation. I teach my own classes from the books that I've written. Uh, and then you also teach humanities classes, like, for example, a CEC 1 or a CEC 2, which are prerequisite classes. They also have a pension. Basically, it's a retirement fund. And so, for example, if I pay 75,000 and the university will match it, and that would be 150,000 a month. And so every month you pay the same, which is matched, and that will accumulate over however many years you're here. And when you do decide to leave, then you can cash it out. And vacation. Now, paid vacation, basically I get paid every month. So in Korea, we get 2 months in the summer and 2 months in the winter. So that's basically 4 months off a year. Actually, a little bit more than that. But the salary is broken down into monthly. I get paid on the 25th of every month if I'm working, or if I'm on summer or winter break, I get the base salary. So for a lot of these jobs, either at a university or at a hagwon, they will give you an E2 working visa, and that's basically you can work at that school only. However, if you want to work under the table, that's a possibility. And if you do get married here, then you will change your visa to an F6, and that means you have all kinds of opportunity. You can start your own business if you want, or you can work legally doing other jobs. And working privates is a part-time gig that you can do if you have the time and the energy. And people may approach you and ask you, "Hey, do you teach privately?" I've had students that come to my apartment. I used to go to other people's apartments to teach, or I've even gone to businesses. I work now online and I teach businessmen. So there's a lot of opportunity teaching private classes in addition to working at a university. And it can either be a one-on-one in person or online, or I've taught, upwards of between 2 to 10 people at a time at a company. And the payment for that can basically run anywhere from 30,000 to upwards of 50. 60 is pretty good pay. 70. I mean, it depends on the company, and it depends on what you are willing to work for. So, lifestyle and travel. If you are a university teacher and you have upwards of 4, 5 months a year, you have a lot of time. And in East Asia, that's a very good location, a good hub that you can travel all throughout the Asian continent very easily and quickly and cheaply. You also have flexibility to be able to, take off for a week, 2 weeks. I've traveled for a month at a time. Next, I'd like to talk about relationships in life abroad. So, dating, marriage, even business opportunity. Dating, if you're single and you're looking for a partner, there's a lot of opportunity depending on your personality and what you're looking for. Marriage also is very possible, but it is a challenge like anywhere, but it's doable. And again, business opportunity with an E2 visa, very difficult. But if you do get married and you have an F6 visa, then you can open up your own academy or even a bakery, whatever you want to do. Especially if you're married to a Korean or a Japanese or a local from whatever country you're living in. They will help you with the legal aspect of starting your own business. But there are definitely pros and cons to living overseas. And so I'd like to touch on a few of them. Some pros of living abroad is basically, the nightlife, depending on your age and what you like to do. If you like to go out and party, and if you live in the big city, then, it can be a lot of fun, but it can be a big drain on your bank account and your health. There's always an expat community that's not too difficult to find. And especially these days, being online, you can find groups that meet up at coffee shops for language exchange or, going hiking. There's hiking groups that you can join. You can go to a church group, a lot of different expat networks. And finally, one of the biggest pros of living abroad is the fact that you personally grow. You're able to meet people from all over the world, which gives you a greater global perspective on how people live, what people think of the country that you are from. It can be humbling at times. It can make you angry at times. But just the sheer number of people and perspective, like Mark Twain's quote, it breaks down stereotypes and it breaks down bigotry. And you just basically realize that you are just one person in the whole sea of humanity. And I've grown a lot since I've been living here for this many years. And I look at my country in a very different light. Sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. Speaking of bad, some of the cons of living abroad, you are always an outsider. You may never be fully accepted here. For example, I'm an American. I'm blonde hair, blue eyes. I will never be brought in and said, you are, oh, you speak Korean very well. You know the country, the culture. You're one of us. No, that will never happen. I will always be a Wayguk. I will always be a foreigner here. There's also a thing called the trap. And getting caught in the trap basically is life can become too comfortable, which basically means it's very hard to leave. And I kind of got caught in that trap. And now, when I moved to the Czech Republic, there's a different kind of trap. That was a financial trap. And I remember talking to a teacher there who he was from Spain and he was working at the university I was at. And I asked him if he was going to be traveling. He said, I can't afford it. And then he said, I can't even afford to leave this country. I can only make enough money to live. And so basically, I'm trapped here. And that was one of the reasons why I decided to U-turn and get out of the Czech Republic earlier than I had anticipated, because the money was so low that it would have only allowed me to live and pay rent and eat. And so in Korea, you make enough money that you're able to travel, you're able to go home, and you're able to save. So another con is xenophobia. Korea can be a xenophobic society. It's known, one of the nicknames of South Korea is a hermit kingdom. And throughout much of its past, they were a hermit kingdom. They kept to themselves. They're a very small country surrounded by Japan, Russia, and China. And so they have a thing called juche, or self-reliance. And basically, they had a fear of foreigners. And they still have a fear of foreigners to a certain extent. Not all, but still you can feel it. And, in a lot of ways, they are xenophobic. They are, the majority of people living here in Korea are Koreans. And they have a bloodline that they value. And so, being intermarried can bring the stink eye sometimes from people, or just being with a Korean woman, or if you're a foreign woman, being with a Korean man. The stigma has changed significantly over 20, 25 years that I've been here. I saw it more in the past. These days, with technology and the world is getting smaller through the internet, and the younger generations are growing up with having foreign teachers at hagwons, or pen pals, or just playing computer games and being in contact with a lot of foreigners. But still, down below the politeness, there still is a layer of xenophobia. And as I mentioned earlier, as a foreigner, you are an ambassador to your country. And when certain foreigners act up, be it in the military, or you know influencers, there's an influencer over here. I can't remember his name, but he's kind of given a lot of bad publicity to foreigners. And when that happens, they get on the news, and they're kind of targeted. And if they're targeted, all foreigners are targeted to a point. We're associated with being a foreigner and being rude. So again, as an ambassador to your country, where you're from, you want to be on your best behavior. It's not always possible. Shit happens, but basically keep it in mind. So if you do decide to make a move and actually live overseas, then I do want to touch briefly on culture shock. And there are 5 stages plus one. The first stage is the honeymoon stage, and that is when you first arrive in a country. Everything is exciting, fascinating, it's new, and you're on a high. And that can last a few days, a few weeks, maybe a month or two. But when you move into your apartment and the newness wears off, the second stage is called the distress stage. And this is kind of when reality hits. It's like, okay, I've been here for a month, and I have 11 months to go. And there's frustration. There might be anxiety, difficulty adjusting. Maybe the school that you're at is a bit difficult for you to adjust to. Or you go to your favorite, you go to the convenience store and you don't have your favorite snacks there. I still remember the very first week I was in Korea, and I went to a convenience store up in Seoul and was looking just for, some potato chips and a Coke. And I just remember squid covering one wall, ramen noodles covering, another wall. And I went to my first baseball game up in Seoul, and the vendor was coming walking through down the steps, barking, and I didn't know what he was selling, but I'm like, "Hey, give me a hot dog, give me a beer and a hot dog." And they're like, "Oh, there's no hot dogs." I'm like, "Well, what do you have?" It's like squid and squid and beer. And I can't even remember. I guess they had peanuts. I can't remember. It was too long ago. But the amount of squid, I was truly astonished. It's like, how are there still squid in the ocean? The amount of squid that I've seen on the streets and convenience stores. And so your conveniences that you're used to back home may not be available over here. And so all of that can cause anxiety, can cause distress and frustration. The third stage is the reintegration stage. And this is basically when you either, you start to cope, you accept it. I've been here 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. I'm in a rhythm now, and life seems more manageable. We begin to adapt to our surroundings. The fourth stage is the autonomy stage, and that is when you gain more confidence and independence in your new environment. You're learning the language, you're meeting people, you're going out, you're networking, and that's a very important stage. The fifth stage is the independence stage. You feel at home. You operate naturally within the culture. You understand the cultural, norms, like taking your shoes off when entering a home. Uh, there are different things to do with your chopsticks. What not to say to people. Eye contact. Shake hands. Don't shake hands. Kiss on the cheek. Don't kiss on the cheek. The customs here are not the same as the customs where you are from. Now, this culture shock at any one of these five stages, you may not make it to that stage. And you may, become that the distress stage might hit too hard, and you might make a U-turn and go home and do the midnight runner. You might not be able to integrate into the culture. You might not be able to learn the language or even want to learn the language. And so at any stage, you might, turn tail and go back home, and that's totally fine. However, if you do stick it out for at least 1 year, into 2 years and 3 years, I'm not going to say that it's going to get better or great, but you will grow as a human being and learn patience and acceptance and enjoy a lot of the benefits that working and living overseas has to offer. Now, if and when you do go back home, there's one more stage to this culture shock, and that is reverse culture shock. And what does that mean? Basically, returning home can feel just as jarring as when you left it. I remember when I came back from the Peace Corps and I walked into a Walmart in America. I literally one day left my village, the mud hut, the no electricity, and no running water. Got on a flight, finally made it home, and went shopping a day or two later. And I walked into a Walmart, and I almost fell over. I forgot how big and how much America has. A lot of it I didn't need, but just the fact that it was there and I could purchase it if I wanted to. And in the back of my mind, I just remembered the old women sitting in those mud huts, swatting at chickens running in and out of the doorway. And if I were to have blindfolded one of those old women and brought her and set her down in this Walmart, took the blindfold off, I often wondered if she would fall over dead, or if she would laugh, or if she would be in awe. I don't know. But when you do live overseas for at least a year and experience a new culture, coming back to your culture, your eyes are open and your brain has changed, and you look at your own culture through different eyes, and that can be good and it can be bad. So, some final thoughts from me, just to reiterate one more time that if you do decide to go and live and work overseas, please do remember that you are an ambassador for your country, so represent it well. Number two, this was advice from my sister before I went to Peace Corps. She was also Peace Corps. She was Peace Corps Nepal when I was in high school. And one of the biggest lessons that she learned was and that she told me was, Stephen, do not lose your sense of humor. That was a valuable piece of advice. Things will get difficult. You will hate many things about the culture that you're living in. But as long as you don't take yourself too seriously or your environment too seriously, just like life, don't lose your sense of humor. Number three, if you do go, try and commit to at least 1 year. Network, network with the people around you, online, in person. Learn as much as possible about the country, about the culture, about yourself. Travel when possible around that country or other countries that surround where you live. Explore and grow. And above all, try and become a citizen of the world. I'm going to end this with one more quote by Mark Twain. And he said, 20 years from now, you will be more disappointed by the things you didn't do than by the ones you did do. So throw off the bow lines, sail away from the safe harbor, catch the trade winds in your sails, explore, dream, discover. Until next time, this is Stephen Walker with A Walker in the Woods. If you tuned in and turned on to this content, please consider dropping me one of these. It helps with the algorithm. Peace out.